Hey there, I'm Jama, and over the past few years, I've become very interested in onomatology, the study of names. I've never really liked my name until I researched the meaning of it. My name means paradigm shifter, and I'd like to shift your paradigm by shining a light on onomatology and how it can potentially help you find your purpose, help you communicate better with others, or even both. In each episode, I ask someone 8 basic questions regarding their first name. So sit back, relax, and try to shift your paradigm with this next episode. All right, on today's episode, I am doing another part 2 with somebody who I interviewed very early on in first starting my podcast about a year and a half ago now. And now that I've interviewed over 100 people. I'm starting to trickle in these part 2s because I want you to learn more about the person who holds the name with that meaning. And I want to also kind of just understand like what they learned from the podcast. So I have a few separate, different questions I'm going to be asking. So welcome to the podcast again, Steve.
Hi, Jama. It's good to be back. Thank you very much for the invitation.
I'm glad you're back.
Me too.
Stephen, Steve has been such a blessing in my life, a person who I really respect and admire. So I'm very grateful to have this conversation. And just as a recap, Steve's name means crown. And I first, before I ask you my new set of questions, I want to paint the picture a little bit more for my listeners. Could you please tell everyone where you're podcasting from and a little bit about yourself?
I am in Houston, Texas, the energy capital of the world, and I currently work as a tax consultant for a large global tax consultancy.
Awesome. All right. Let's jump into my first question. So, since I interviewed you about your name, I think about a year and a half ago.
It was, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, you're one of my first interviews. So how, I'm just curious, since that time, how often do you actually think about the meaning of your name since doing the podcast?
I think about it pretty frequently, about my name and about how people address me, and the importance of addressing people appropriately too. I mean, you know that I have a side gig where I'm a sports announcer for the school system where I live here in Houston. And so pronunciation and getting it right the first time and every time is really, really important. I generally ask an athlete or a coach to help me pronounce names correctly before any kind of contest. And it's pretty funny because usually a head coach knows and assistant coaches don't. And so I learned it pretty quickly to go to head coaches to get it right. And then in the business world, I'll be on a meeting with someone. It happened just to me yesterday. I asked a woman to help me pronounce her name. I said, "Am I saying it correctly?" And I wasn't. And I said, "Okay, well, I'll explain afterward. But long story short, I don't want your mom calling me on Monday morning and saying that I pronounced your name incorrectly." And so I have been paying a lot of attention to it. Both from just wanting to get it right out of respect for other people, because there's some really creative stuff out there, and also just wanting to be more respectful of how that name was chosen and probably the thoughtfulness that went into it as well.
I love that. That's so good. It's a very positive thing. And I'm curious, do you ever find yourself looking up other people's names, like the meaning of their names at all?
I have a couple times since the first round of the podcast about 18 months ago. And I probably should more because looking it up is just so much easier than ever before. I have this supercomputer that I hold in my hand, on an iPhone all the time. I can just Google it. I mean, I think that kind of thing is really fun, especially if you have the opportunity to ask people where they're from, especially if they have an accent you don't recognize or you think you recognize. You just want to be sure. Like if you hear someone you think is from England, well, Australian accents are pretty easy to pick out. It's really different, but are they English? Are they, or where in England are they from? Or are they South African in particular? And sometimes I get it right and sometimes wrong, but I do look it up from time to time, to have a better feel for it, and it's fun too. It's one of those things that I like to do, just looking up odd things. My wife calls me the king of useless information, but I think that this might be actually a pretty useful piece of information that I can use.
Yeah, I'm curious. Tell me more. Why do you think it's useful?
I think it's really cool. The way people move around right now, it's not unusual to be living on the same street as someone, going to church with someone, going to school with someone, working with someone who has an extremely different background than you have. Like living here in Houston, I mentioned it's the energy capital of the world, but what that also means is that like British Petroleum has more employees here than they do in Great Britain. And so there's a lot of English people running around. There's a lot of people from South and Central America here. There are a lot of people from throughout Europe and Asia here as well. And so it's really interesting to find out where people are from and what the rest of the story is. And I think it's really important to get the name right. Again, just to be sure that person knows that you care enough to get it right in
Yeah.
a conversation, especially if you have to turn around and introduce them to somebody else. But I think that's part of it too, is to get the rest of the story. Help me pronounce your name correctly. Well, that's a really interesting name. Where are you from? And sometimes they'll say something really, really out of this world, like they're from a far off place in another continent. And sometimes you were just reading it wrong and find out that they're from, Cleveland, Ohio, or something like that. But nevertheless, you get to learn something new about that person and that conversation. It brings you a little bit closer to them.
Totally agree. I love that. Have you had, can you think back over the last 18 months? Have you had a conversation with anyone where you said, "Hey, do you know like what your name means?"
I've had a couple of those, and I'm surprised that most people don't.
Yeah.
Most people do not know what their name means. I remember the first time I heard this kind of conversation, I was a grade schooler, and I went to school with a girl named Amy, Aimee, and it turned out one of the teachers had a daughter with the same name, same spelling, and they had this big long conversation about what the name meant. And at the time, I had no idea what my name meant. I didn't even know you could do that. And back then, you would have had to go to the library and pull the Encyclopedia Britannica off the wall. And it turned out that the name Amy meant love when it's spelled that way. I have no idea what AMY means, if it means anything differently. But I mean, at the time, I was kind of interested in the conversation, and then after a few minutes, I just kind of wanted to get on with the day. But Amy was a very nice person. I'm sure she still is, and so it was cool to know that about her name, and after meeting her parents, I assure you that they chose that name very, very carefully.
Yeah. Yes. I know. Whenever I hear the name Amy, because it does mean beloved, love, beloved.
Hmm.
And I have such a positive reaction and a positive emotion with that name because I have like five Amy's in my life and they're all wonderful. And actually most of them are realtors, which is very interesting. But they're very nice. So yes,
Yeah.
that's
The
cool.
propensity to be a realtor based on your name. Um, the only other one, it's oddly, people have pets, of course, and they love to choose their pet's name, and people names are really popular with pets now. I have my Italian Greyhound Tucker is seated next to me right now on the floor in my home office, and we have, you know, expansions and contractions of his name and nicknames and stuff where I'm like that. He's Tucker, he's Tucker Tucker, he's Tuckerton, he's Tuckertown, and my wife's favorite, Stinky Boy. So, because he does get a little smelly from time to time. So, instead of taking that kind of thing out on our kids over the years, we just, we have 10 nicknames for my dog.
Yeah, nice. All right. And I am curious. So like ultimately, what did you take away from doing the podcast?
You know, Gemma, what I took away from it was that there's always places to look for meaning. and there's always places to look for some depth in someone. And you see their actions, or and perhaps can really appreciate their actions. You may know some of their history. You may know what they do for work. They may be a student, they may be a classmate, something like that. But it's just a little bit of a deeper delve into who somebody is and how that name can affect them, or how they use that name to promote themselves from a personal standpoint, and the close relationships in their lives are from a business standpoint and things like that. Like I've heard that William is a name that overwhelmingly winds up being a chief executive officer and stuff like that. I've seen that in a couple different places. And I'm like, well, too bad my parents didn't name me William, but I've seen that kind of thing too. But it's really cool just to have a better understanding of somebody's of somebody as a person. Just peel the onion back an extra layer and get to know a little something extra about them. It makes for a great conversation. It's fun. It's good, clean fun to figure out, what someone's name means, what the origin was, how they got their name, who they're named after, if anybody. Is that their proper name? Is it a nickname or something like that? It's a good time. It's a really good conversation starter.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, great. Well, those were all my questions. Did you have any questions for me? We
Well,
don't.
I think it's just a fascinating subject, and so I want to congratulate you on getting through 100 episodes of the podcast. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's very thoughtful, and I think it's a good thing for somebody whose name is Jama. You're the only Jama I've ever known, and so that the subject matter I think matches up really well with you and your personality. You're very intelligent, very inquisitive. And so I think it's a great service to the rest of us who would listen to the podcast that we get to learn from you about the subject of what's in a name. So thank you for having me on again.
Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe or follow the podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps me continue bringing you meaningful conversations with remarkable guests. Don't forget to tune in next time for more insightful discussions and inspiring stories. Until then, thank you for listening and keep striving to make a positive impact wherever you are. And don't forget to tap into the meaning of your own name to find a deeper sense of confidence in your purpose.